Our story begins with the protagonist talking to his boss. He says there was a family emergency and asks for 2 days off. When he returns, he promises to make up for the lost time. The boss doesn't care much about what he says and stays glued to his phone. But he does reply, saying leave is only granted for special events like weddings and funerals. The reason he's not paying attention to the protagonist is actually understandable. And since he handles the money, he even gives out gifts sometimes. The protagonist tries to argue, saying his mother is very sick, hospitalized, and someone needs to take care of her. Isn't it possible to make just one exception? But the boss asks if he doesn't have a father, and if his father can't take care, just ask another relative. Back on the phone, we see the woman thanking her older brother, Moa, for the gifts. The protagonist starts feeling distressed, seeing the boss isn't even paying attention. The boss says the protagonist needs to make sacrifices. When his father died, he was doing overtime at the funeral. And look where he is today. The protagonist keeps trying to argue and find a way, but the bosses won't accept anything. Finally, Eric Kant says he won't convince the protagonist. If he thinks it's too hard, he should just quit. The boss stands up and clarifies things. The protagonist shouldn't even be there. He was only hired because the company urgently needed people. So please, he shouldn't be ungrateful. He shouldn't waste the opportunity he was given. Touching the protagonist's shoulder, he says trends won't wait for him, much less the position. So he should think or leave. Some time passes, and we see someone smoking a cigarette. And the one smoking is the miserable protagonist, who doesn't care about his lungs. But that's fine. He gets a call. His father is the one calling him Xing Wang. We finally learn the bastard's name. The father asks if he has time to come back to see him at the hospital. A nurse approaches and asks about medical expenses. The hospital has been flexible, but with more delays it'll be tough. The father says he'll fix it soon, but the doctor replies he said that last week, and if it's not resolved this time, the patient will be discharged. The father, out of options, says he understands. He returns to speak with the protagonist, saying he was busy and didn't hear what he said. Could he repeat it? Xing tells his father he'll come back in a few days and will help with the medical bills. But the father says not to worry. He already borrowed money from friends and relatives. Besides that, his mother has health insurance, so that'll help a lot. But the protagonist doesn't like the idea and tells his father not to borrow from relatives. He'll cover what's missing himself. The father says he just graduated and city costs are probably high, so he doesn't have to do that. But the protagonist replies, it's fine, he has money, and hangs up. Looking at his account, Xing thinks he's been working for a year and a half. Even with a monthly salary of 5,000, he saves a lot by sharing an apartment. Besides that, he still earns extra money editing videos. And food is cheap, so he's not too worried. So in that year and a half, he saved 50,000. Lowering his head, the protagonist thinks that probably those 50,000 will cover his mother's medical expenses for a while. Leaving the room, the protagonist thinks he's lived over 20 years and hasn't done anything remarkable. Today, he decided to change that. There are many other job opportunities, but his parents can't wait, so he quit. Apparently, that little room was the boss's office. Actually, it was the HR office. And apparently, he wasn't leaving. He was entering. 20 minutes later, our protagonist was officially unemployed. Nowadays, with high unemployment, the guy quit without having another job. That guy is brave. And out of nowhere, the little system appears. It says that because the protagonist went against his ancestors, simply abandoning the job, he gets a reward of 88. No way, right? The protagonist doesn't understand anything. What do you mean? Out of nowhere, the system, the money, he starts to believe someone must be watching too much TikTok. That must be it. Xing starts wondering what this interface in front of him is. And the system tells him to check the money in his account. The reward money, that is. And mainly, to really enjoy it. The more he enjoys it, the more money he'll have. The protagonist then grabs his phone. Opening the bank chat, he sees that he really did get the money. Now he has a bit more than 138,000. Clearly, out of nowhere, he doesn't quite believe it. He starts thinking it must be a scam, because it can't be real. There's no way. It's such a huge number. The system asks him, please, not to doubt. He just awakened the system, so he should start enjoying it. If the protagonist hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he really wouldn't believe it. But it's right in front of him. He literally just awakened the system. But that's fine. He believes he's got the hang of the system. He'll find an opportunity in the middle of this thing. A girl arrives and asks what he's thinking. That's Gang, a blogger with 8 million fans. She's another crazy one from his company. She asks the protagonist if he stopped working on the script for her next live. She approaches the protagonist, asking if he did what he was supposed to do. But the protagonist, with his eyes focused somewhere else, doesn't really hear, and asks what exactly he was supposed to do. Noticing the protagonist's awkwardness, Gang asks if he finally opened his eyes to her. And the protagonist remains awkward, as always. Getting a bit closer, she repeats, saying she asked him for more scripts. Gang is the top female internet celebrity the protagonist manages. She's known as the goddess of sexy dance. Xiao apologizes and says he already quit his job. Now he's no longer the one who'll be writing the scripts. Gang asks why he did that so suddenly. The protagonist starts packing his things. He knows Gang doesn't look down on anyone, but she only gave him looks because he wrote really good scripts. So, after quitting, they each go their own way. Our boy now has a clearer mind. The damn girl who loves to tease gets close again. She asks if he really wants to quit. She still prefers him, says she doesn't trust anyone else. The protagonist, who isn't dumb, says he's already completed all the procedures. She, using all her charm, asks if Xiao is really going to leave her alone. But the protagonist senses her malice. She's only loyal to him because she sees profit in him. Xiao replies that he wants an extended vacation. She throws herself at him and asks which company he plans to go to. Are they going to become rivals then? The protagonist can't take it. He's holding back with all his might. He thinks about grandma, aunt, mom, but he remembers that with the system, he can become a billionaire. So, what kind of beauty can't he have? Surely, the one right in front of him looks like a lot of work. Our warrior on the side breaks the mood. He says the girl's nose is a bit crooked. She should get some maintenance to fix it. Obviously, that breaks the girl's confidence. She asks, "What do you mean, crooked?" She then pulls a mirror from a dangerous area and starts checking her face. She wonders how it could be crooked, because that's basically impossible. Looking closely, she thinks it really is crooked. But the live is about to start. She needs to fix it fast. The little system shows up again and congratulates the protagonist. He refused to be the lapdog of a very beautiful woman. Therefore, he earned 23,000 and some change. He then checks his account to see if the money arrived. And yes, my friends, there's the blessed pics. The protagonist is starting to like this idea. This really means ultimate freedom. Now he even created a mantra. Be yourself. Refuse to be cattle. Gang thanks the protagonist for the heads up and says she hadn't noticed. And since he's really leaving, she wishes him good luck and a bright future. He wonders if she shouldn't be furious. After all, her flaw was exposed. But actually, she's calm. Is she pretending? Or is she really sincere? The girl keeps talking. She says that since they've been friends for a long time, she'll take him out for dinner. And if he hasn't found a job, just message her. The protagonist starts to consider that maybe everything she said before wasn't a lie. And she's actually kind of nice. Xiao replies to the girl saying that he should be the one inviting her to a farewell dinner. How could he let her pay? But the girl says his salary wasn't that high, he should save it. But the protagonist replies that since he's leaving, they don't need to be stingy this time. And as she said, they might work together in the future, so this is important. Gang starts to smile, saying that even though the protagonist is leaving, she still doesn't know him very well. Yeah, protagonist. If you keep making her smile like that, you might actually make it. Make her smile until she forgets you're ugly. Got it? Some time passes, and now the protagonist is heading home. The protagonist usually uses public transportation, but today, since he has money, he wants to do something different. How about calling a taxi? But today he wants the most expensive one. He's going to enjoy this money coming in. Taxi was more like a luxury item in his life, right? Then it arrives, boys. That Uber black. Take that back. That's not black. That one's way above. The protagonist is happy because the luxury car arrived in under 3 minutes. The story flashes back a few days, when the protagonist was leaving work. It was too late to split an Uber with someone. But that's just to show it, because we're back to the present. He really had a class jump today. The man is different. The driver politely asks the boss to get in the car. The system appears once again and says the user is feeling generous. He took a taxi without even checking the price. So, as a reward, he earned 50,000. The driver asks if he's really going to the pancake shop, and the protagonist confirms. That really is his itinerary. So, the driver speeds up and heads on his way. The protagonist notices the luxury seat is actually quite comfortable, different from any other. Sometime later, he already arrived at the shop. The protagonist gets out of the car. He feels radiant, confident about everything. After all, now the man's got quite a bit of money. Well, not that much, but a lot compared to before. Already inside the shop, the woman notices the protagonist is there again, and asks if he's going for the usual. Pancakes with no eggs and the sausage. The protagonist says no. This time he wants 2 extra eggs. The protagonist also says he wants 2 whole sausages, not a sausage starch. He reflects that when his salary was 5,000, he spent 800 just on rent. He couldn't spend more than 20 on food. So it all had to be very basic. He always ate the 8 in pancake, and that's why he never added egg. But now he's happy because he leveled up. Instead of spending $8 on a meal, 8 an, he spent 15. He's feeling himself because of that. The worst part is everyone really starts to envy him. Apparently, everyone there has a terrible 9-to-5 job. The system congratulates him once again for shocking everyone. So he earns, as a reward, 20,000 yen. Everything for him is incredible and satisfying. Obviously, I would be too. The guy farts, he gets money. The guy burps, he gets money. The guy breathes, he gets money. The lucky one keeps saying that next time he'll order 5 eggs. Back when the protagonist was studying, he was so poor he couldn't do anything. But after he started working, he lacked money, but also time. So he kind of doesn't know what normal people do for fun. But then, a building catches his attention. Probably a mall. That's when he remembers something. Actually, no. He remembers he forgot something. Now that he has plenty of money, he can simply go to a mall. Speaking of memories, he ends up realizing he owes gang a dinner. But expensive restaurants have a dress code, and his current outfit isn't cutting it. So, it's shopping time. He wants to go straight to the most expensive one. Look, not just any one. He wants that one. The dummy doesn't understand why all the store names are in English. Hope he doesn't go in. Because if he does, you already know. He's torn about which store to enter. He gets mad that such a big mall doesn't have an Adidas. So, he has no choice. He goes into the one right in front. He's going to drop that poor mindset. He enters the one he shouldn't have entered. Of all of them, he picks the wrong one. The attendants notice a customer arrived, but one of them doesn't want to go, saying she's busy. In reality, we know she sized up the protagonist. He's wearing fake sneakers, cheap clothes, a second-hand phone, and to make it worse, no disguise. His hair's uncut, so no one wants to serve him. He starts wondering if really no one's going to help. Yeah, protagonist, this one wasn't for you, my friend. You should have gone into a different store. He tells the attendants he's tired from work and didn't have time to research. He just wanted to buy something around 15,000 and be done. But since they're not helping and wasting his time, he'll go to the store next door. Hearing the amount, the attendants are stunned. Then, quickly, they all surround him. He realizes that money really speaks louder. Sometime later, the protagonist's already in new clothes. He realizes the service for those with money really is first class. He doesn't even have to carry the bag. The women do that for you. One woman even tries to convince him to come back because there'll be a jewelry event at the end of the month. But the protagonist says he'll go, if he has time. The assistant asks if the protagonist would like her to send those sneakers to his house. He says no, it's not necessary. She then thanks him and wishes him a good day. The protagonist notices 2 girls talking, and they're saying how expensive those stores are. Unfortunately, they still can't afford clothes there. The protagonist thinks that, in fact, they really are expensive. The system shows up again, saying the protagonist just spent 3 years' worth of salary at once. He made his first big purchase, and, as a reward, he earned 660,000. Now the man is happy. He realized that the more he spends, the more he earns. He's a little closer to becoming a millionaire, so he needs to work harder. But his work harder is spending, right guys? So everything's cool. The scene shifts to an exotic Western-style restaurant, and there's our protagonist, all glamorous and dazzling. According to the description, The attendant greets the protagonist and says she'll take him to the private and reserved room. He thinks he probably arrived too early, but the attendant says the VIP area is separate, where he can rest, enjoy some desserts, and then wait for his friends. The protagonist thinks he's never been treated like this in these places. Yeah, protagonist, because you've never been to these places, right? You didn't even have money, man. The attendant shows the VIP area and even says there are desserts and teas on the table. He can help himself. If he wants anything, just ring the bell. So, she leaves and asks him to enjoy the meal. Our future millionaire enjoys the city view. And yes, he's really high up. He's on the 40th floor. That's a view he's never seen before. He starts thinking that, as long as someone has money, they can enjoy the best services. You can reach heights others can't. In this case, those 9-to-5 folks, right? But not only that. The protagonist also knows his biggest fantasies become reality. But that one, he remembers he has family, right? He needs to send money to his father. So he sends 100,000 ons. He doesn't want to surprise his dad with the amount. So he'll say it's from a part-time job he found. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold up. We saw some dangerous scenes there. Not just dangerous, but very spicy. We see that Howen tells someone called #1 fan that everyone's missing his rocket. Give the girl some money, man, she asks. Please, trying to be more seductive. The scene goes back to the protagonist, and he says he sent the location and restaurant name to Gayen, but she's not replying. So she must be streaming. And that's exactly it. And guess who's the #1 fan sending rockets? Yep, the naughty and sneaky protagonist. Gayen says goodbye to everyone and says that's the end of the stream, but there'll be more tomorrow. After a stream like that, she takes off her heels and sits for a bit, because the poor girl worked hard, right? Her friends show up, asking what she's going to eat tonight, but she replies that tonight she's busy. The friend next to her asks, who's her sugar? She found one? But girl, already thinking he's her sugar? Can it be a young guy? A silver fox? A young guy, Gayen? She asks her friend not to talk nonsense because she knows the guy she's going out with. It's Shang, the protagonist. One of the friends comments that she can't forget him, even after he left the job. The other even asks if something is going on between them. But the girl just answers by telling them to stop imagining things. After all, he helped a lot when he was her manager. So the friend asks to go along. Gayen says it's fine. Gayen explains to the girl that they'll eat something normal. But since he's very thoughtful, if it's something expensive, they'll pay for it themselves. So, if she wants to think that way, she can think of it as a group dinner. The girl agrees. And worse, the other one's coming too. This is turning into a mess, huh? The one in the back is up to something. She knows the protagonist is broke. What fancy restaurant could he afford? Gayen says goodbye to her friends and tells them she'll meet them at the parking lot. She'll remove her makeup first. Sometime later, the Powerpuff Girls are already in the parking lot. Gayen already pulls out her car key. The girl only drives new model cars, baby. The friend next to her comments that it's really hard to get contracts, so she couldn't afford a car like that anytime soon. Gayen says she could try becoming a dance streamer. The girl shudders. That's rough, huh? I doubt she'll become something like that, because it's too exhausting. She's just waiting for a soft-hearted fan to take her abroad. To sum it up for you, she wants a sucker ready to take her out of the country. The redhead comments that Zan is complaining with a full belly. In their field, it's already good enough not to be used and have to sleep with sponsors. But she's still talking about being taken abroad. But Anne asks her friend what's wrong with having dreams. The friend says it's fine. If she wants, she can keep dreaming. Interrupting the subject, Gayen pulls out her phone and checks the location of where the protagonist is. But seeing the location, she's surprised. The redhead already had a feeling. She thinks the place is so cheap that the girl got shocked. Onin says it's the Lingwei restaurant, the restaurant in the King Tan Chan building. It's a super famous restaurant with 3 Michelin stars, but that place costs at least 3,000 per person, not to mention how hard it is to get a reservation there. Zan asks if the location is really correct. Could it be that Hang got rich and successful and that's why he quit? The redhead says maybe it's just in the same building, nothing more. Gayen says not to judge so quickly. He's not that kind of vain person, okay? But they stop stalling, get in the car, and decide to find out there. So, it's time to hustle and hit the road. Sometime later, the girls arrive at the building's parking lot. Dangerous as always. They get out of the car. The girls ask Ren to confirm the place. Imagine if they get there and have to go back. They don't want to go through that embarrassment. Gayen confirms and says she'll call the protagonist. The phone rings and rings, but no one answers. The redhead smiles, thinking this is Gayen's fault. It was her fault for getting close to someone who likes to show off. Gayen comments that maybe Shang is busy. The redhead keeps teasing, saying, "Sure, that's it." He would never ignore a call to play around with her. So, why don't they go check in person? Gayen agrees and starts entering the elevator. But actually, inside, Gayen is really worried. She knows that if the protagonist really is at that restaurant, the cost will be huge. And if that's the case, she'll have to deal with the bill. They finally arrive at the restaurant entrance. Gayen starts looking sideways to see if she really finds the protagonist. But actually, she doesn't understand why he's not answering the call. She already called a few times and he hasn't answered until now. That's when the attendant arrives from behind and asks if she has a reservation. But when Gayen was going to speak, the redhead interrupts, saying yes. Gayen says it's likely the reservation is under the name Yang. The redhead is really interested in messing things up and seeing how Gayen will handle this whole situation. But the attendant asks them to follow her. She says Mr. Yang has been waiting for a long time. The redhead is speechless, can't believe it's true. The girls then start following the attendant. The redhead walks along envying Gayen, all because she's the top baddie and gets lots of things. The redhead keeps thinking the protagonist is being too ambitious. He's aiming way too high. He's probably wasting time and money. And does Gayen like guys who get rich? But anyway, the attendant takes them to the elevator again. Then, she presses the button for the 40th floor. Zan tells Gayen that she's really worried. The name on the reservation might be someone else's. And she explains that elevator is exclusive for VIP customers. The chance of it being our protagonist is very low. Actually, almost none. The cost to see that view and eat there is at least 10,000. And probably 10,000 per person. The jealous one keeps on envying, as always. She thinks our pro is pretty sneaky. He saw someone with the same name made the reservation, and now wants to take advantage of it. But to kill her curiosity, we arrive at the 40th floor. The attendant opens the door to that VIP room, but they notice the protagonist isn't there. Zan doesn't care, decides to take some pictures. Since they're there, they should at least enjoy it, right? She says the goal is to create media. Whether she eats or not doesn't really matter. And down at the reception they don't allow photos. It has to be in the private room. So there it is, right? A little pic for the status. She can post it and no one will imagine she didn't eat anything. Who's gonna know? Nobody. She was there. The jealous one is annoyed and says she's not taking any photo. Zhang, on the other hand, is really happy. She's never dined at a restaurant as expensive as that one. But the funny thing is, she hasn't even dined yet. And most importantly, where's our protagonist? This story is his, not these girls. But anyway, Zhang is making the most of it, because she doesn't know when she'll get a chance to be there again. The redhead asks Gayen if he still hasn't replied. If it's a misunderstanding, she should at least say something soon. But the receptionist knocks on the door, calling for the protagonist and asking if he's still awake. She says the guests have arrived. Meanwhile, Gayen replies saying maybe they really got the wrong person. That's exactly what the redhead wanted to hear. But then we see a little foot. And of course, it's that unlucky Ang. He apologizes. He ended up sleeping and took all this time. Being polite, he even asks if they waited long. He tells the waitress front desk receptionist that now she can serve him. I've never seen a woman with so many roles like her. Zan asks if he's really the Yang they know. He's wearing a bunch of designer clothes. Just that jacket alone costs $7,000. The redhead bites her tongue in anger when she sees the protagonist's whole collection is Louis Vuitton. And she starts to wonder when Gayen got so lucky. The protagonist, realizing there are more people, greets the girls. He guesses one is Zan, but the other he doesn't remember. Actually, he can't even tell who she is. So she introduces herself as Kai, also known as the resident jealous one. The protagonist apologizes for not recognizing her. He just woke up and is a bit confused. Not to mention she, without a filter, looks a bit different. Kai says it's fine. Her makeup today is light, but clearly she's fuming inside. Gayen says she was leaving work and those two colleagues asked to come along. She figured the protagonist wouldn't mind, so she brought them. There's no time for the protagonist to even answer, because the waiters arrive. And the first meal of the night was that rare steak, obviously accompanied by wine. Looking at her reflection in the wine, Gayen thinks, Why is the proto doing all this? They won't even be able to split the bill. Zan comments that there's a second-generation rich kid among them, and asks if that's why he quit, to go back to the family business. But Gayen replies that she doesn't know. Back to the protagonist, looking at the table, he thinks how can anyone have the guts to eat that? Apparently it's just leftovers, even though it looks fancy. Our resident influencer asks if it's okay to take a picture. Our protagonist, of course, says absolutely not. She can take her blessed picture. So she takes her little picture to post on Instagram. The redhead asks Gayen what's going on. But again, she replies that she has no idea. They didn't have much contact beyond work-related matters. So where did our protagonist get so much money from? Gayen considers that our protagonist might be a low-profile and pragmatic heir. Maybe this time he doesn't want any girl to pay for his food and decided to show off all his wealth. He asks the waitress if there's anything more down to earth. The waitress asks the pro what he thinks of ribs with black truffles, bathed in salmon roe sauce. She also mentions a few other dishes, but they all sound bad. See? Even the protagonist says hearing those names kills his appetite. But since there's no way around it, he orders 2 crabs and 2 imported steaks. Zan is impressed, because it's the first time she sees someone ordering like that in an expensive restaurant. The super annoying woman says that if the pro wanted to eat that kind of food, he shouldn't have come to a French restaurant. She wonders if he's really an heir. He's more like someone who got rich all of a sudden and hasn't adjusted to the standards yet. Looking through more options, the protagonist orders grilled skewers. The woman says no. They only prepare items that are on the menu, and those they don't have, so she apologizes. He then asks to call the manager. He's not very satisfied with the menu. The woman agrees and asks him to wait a moment, but inside, she doesn't believe he's being serious. Sometime later, the blessed manager arrives. He already comes in apologizing, saying they are a French restaurant. They only serve French cuisine. The jealous one likes the situation. After all, to her, it looks like the protagonist is an idiot, trying to order a different cuisine in a French restaurant. But our protagonist, who's now crazy rich, he wants barbecue no matter what, even if the restaurant is French. The protagonist gives an ultimatum. He's going to pay $300,000 for the meals, and if the guy can get the grilled kidneys and the barbecue skewer, he'll tip $50,000 more. The manager is impressed, and so are the girls. The manager completely changes his tone and says of course he'll do it, even if he has to get his own hands dirty. But after all, how does he like his meat? The protagonist liked the man's change in attitude. The manager tells the protagonist to sit down, that from now on he'll take care of everything. The reason the protagonist is doing all this is because of the system. He basically received a mission, and if he does everything he's doing, he'll earn a $500,000 reward. And obviously, when it's about money, our protagonist would even fight the devil. Already seated, our protagonist says that dinner should be about relaxing and eating what you want, and asks the girls if they don't agree. Zan immediately raises her hand saying she agrees. Big time. Even more when she can eat for free, right? The waiters, with the new dishes, begin to arrive. The blessed silver skewer arrives, and there's even a sauce to go with it. Zan is impressed and says money really buys everything. She already pulls out her phone, right folks? Because the picture is more important than eating. The protagonist then asks the girls if they'd like to join him to eat that slightly different dinner, and especially eat barbecue in a French restaurant. Next scene, there's nothing left on the table. Well, there is, but only leftovers. Hang excuses himself, saying he's going to the bathroom. As soon as he turns around, the girls start commenting on how expensive just his clothes are. Zan asks what was the reason the protagonist was working at the company. After all, he has money. Why was he working? Was it to be closer to Gayen? But Gayen replies saying she's not that charming. Zan comments that maybe, being a second-generation heir, he just wanted to experience a bit more of life. The jealous redhead asks if Gayen isn't touched by this. Doesn't she like him? Zan agrees with the idea. After all, the protagonist is an extremely rich, generous guy and spent a lot on dinner for her. So, if you think about it, the redhead, whose name I forgot because it was only mentioned once, says that she really seems too calm. Did she already know about his wealth? It's not fair for her to keep that secret. She should have said something earlier. Gayen says again that she didn't know. They aren't that close, so she didn't even have time to develop feelings for him. She says she really has no intentions with our boy. and had no idea how rich he was. Until last night at the company, he was always ethical and modest. Besides, he was very ambitious and worked really hard, often stayed late doing overtime. So he kind of looked like any other employee. The redhead asks Gayan if she thinks he might be faking it. Is she really thinking the protagonist isn't rich? The guy just spent a fortune in front of her, and she thinks he's faking it? Where would the guy get the money to fake that much? I prefer to follow Zan's analogy, who thinks the protagonist was faking being poor. But the redhead, to know if the protagonist really came from a rich family, decides to investigate. But Gayan asks if that's really necessary. He's paying for an expensive dinner for them. Doubting and calling him a fraud doesn't seem very right. But the redhead reflects, thinking Gayan is sounding too innocent. She tells Gayan not to underestimate her own value. She's a popular streamer, so he gains a lot by getting close to her. That's exactly how manipulative people operate. So, if that's the case, it's really dangerous. But Gayan replies saying she has no intention of developing feelings for the protagonist. But the redhead says it's fine. Enough talking. She doesn't need to do anything specific, just follow her ideas and orders. Sometime later, they're already in the garage. Not just the girls, but the protagonist too. Gayan hopes the protagonist isn't faking, because if he is, she'll be the one who has to cover today's expenses. And honestly, she says there's nothing wrong with living a humble life. Zan calls out to the protagonist. She says she's curious and asks if he's dating anyone. The protagonist says no. He's been single since birth. Zan is impressed by that and asks if he's serious. He explains by saying he was always focused on his career. So, he didn't have much time to think about it. But on the other hand, he even thinks that wasn't a bad thing. Just imagine, you work all day, get home, and still get messed up being in love with a woman. Wouldn't be a great situation, right? He's not dumb enough to fall into that trap, so he just can't get a girlfriend, really, and doesn't want to admit it. But, checking the time, the redhead comments that it's still early. Why don't they continue this in a bar? She might not be as rich as the prota, but she can pay for a few drinks. The protagonist likes the idea. Why not go to a bar, right? So, they head off in the car. Looking through the rear-view mirror, Gayan notices the protagonist is deep in thought. The worst part is that makes her thoughtful too. The protagonist's thoughts, of course, revolve around money. Now that he has capital, why not start his own company? So, it's a good idea to meet some celebrities. Arriving at the bar, the redhead warns that she only has money to pay for 2 drinks for each person, because prices at the bar are pretty high. And she asks if everyone agrees and is fine with that. Obviously, everyone agrees. So, they head into the bar. The protagonist is excited. He never thought he'd have the privilege of visiting Barfog, which by the way is frequented by many celebrities. Already inside the bar, the question comes up. Is this a bar or a nightclub? For sure, this is not a bar. The prota, in the middle of everyone, is feeling pretty out of place. After all, the guy isn't used to all this stuff. The redhead says she's going to have a margarita. The rest can choose. One goes with alcohol-free Absolute. Another goes with pink LED. But one person still hasn't ordered, and that's our protagonist. He thinks for a moment and says, it can be anything. He's good. So, the redhead orders a Long Island iced tea for him. But Zan asks why she's ordering such a strong drink. Is she trying to expose the truth while he drinks? But isn't that taking it too far? The redhead replies saying they're in a bar. So, at the end of the day, bar is a place to drink. That's when you see the crew getting lively. Out of nowhere, the redhead comments there's a bartender who makes a great drink, but they're a bit more expensive. Still, she wants to try it. Gayan asks her if she doesn't know when to stop, but she replies saying the prota is faking being rich. So why not teach him a lesson? That way he won't try it again. So, she calls out for Han. The redhead gets shut down, because the protagonist is pretending not to hear her. But the guy turns around asking if she called for him. The redhead says the protagonist looks bored. How about they play dice? The protagonist is interested and asks how to play. The crazy one stands up saying she's going to liven things up. The girl's game is as wholesome as possible. It's simple. If the protagonist loses, he has to take off a piece of clothing. And if he doesn't want to, he has to pay £10,000 The protagonist just smiles. He reminds the girl that he was the operations manager at the company, so he knows pretty much all her info and even her skills. So our boy knows she's a dice game specialist. So, he asks if she's trying to trick him to make money, or worse, make him spend money. She immediately gets defensive. The protagonist gives her an ultimatum and says he knows what she's thinking. He, a mere operations guy, earning around $5,000 a month, with no future prospects, with a poor and inexperienced appearance. But now he's there, wearing Louis Vuitton, taking all of them to eat extremely expensive food. So she's thinking he's pretending to be rich. He intended to let that one slide to avoid seeing her stupid face. She probably sees the prota as an easy target, but our boy is not stupid. He can clearly see her disdainful looks. The system appears again, saying the host refused to engage in internal conflict and refused to be made a fool. So the unlucky guy earned $1,899,000, but he admits he didn't come from a rich family. The redhead asks if Gayen heard that. Was she right all along? Was he faking? But the prota smiles, telling her not to rush. He hasn't finished speaking. Although he's not from a rich family, our boy has plenty of money. So, he makes her an offer. He'll give her $300,000, but she'll have to leave there with nothing. Is she interested in this deal? She gets embarrassed and calls the protagonist disgusting. Gayen stands up and ends up mediating the situation. She says Shin is just joking, so the prota shouldn't be mad about it. It's better for everyone to sit down and have fun. But Shinu doesn't stop. She asks if he's really planning to give 300,000 won, as if he'd have that much money. But the protagonist yells to everyone, today he's spending 300,000 on drinks for everyone there. He's not leaving until everyone is drunk. He raises his golden card and says he's paying everything on debit, my friend. Next scene. The protagonist's little card has already been approved and he's feeling like he owns the whole damn place. The crowd starts cheering for him. After all, he's paying for beer and booze for everyone. Obviously, the system appears rewarding him once again. He earned the reward of twice the devil's number. Shinu is impressed because, really, the protagonist paid 300,000 in booze for everyone. He walks past her saying he knows she usually looks down on poor guys like him, those who don't make a lot of money. But that doesn't mean he's going to let her disrespect him. After all, people like her are just ants to him. Those people who only care about others' wallets are also the easiest to humiliate with money. After a slip-up like that, right folks? The guy has to sit and take a breath. The girl also sits, but now very quiet. The friends look at each other, thoughtful. And Shin stands up saying she remembered she has something to do tonight, so she's heading out. She left there all sad and crying. Obviously, after suffering that kind of humiliation, there's not much to be done. But the prota didn't feel any pity about all that. He calls the girls to keep the night going, since he's paying anyway. Out of nowhere, a woman shows up recognizing Gayen. She says Gayen did really bad today. Must have come there to drown her sorrows in booze. This girl, who's unknown, keeps talking that Gayen's #1 fan was pretty weak today. Will he stop donating to her in the future? But Gayen replies that she's off work and doesn't want to keep talking about it. The girl touches Gayen's face, provoking her even more. Gayen removes the girl's hand and says her business is her own problem. The prota, from afar, is analyzing all of this. The girl, I think she's crazy, because she sits near them. She says she won't miss the opportunity and is going to start a live stream. Starting the stream, she says she met Gayen at the bar, and also, obviously, asks her followers if they want to see a PK live. But she says Gayen isn't really up for participating and asks the followers if they can convince her. Gayen starts receiving tons of notifications asking her to join. The girl is convinced she's going to win this competition. After all, the big sponsors that always support her are in the live. Her goal is very clear: become the top 1 dancer. But Gayen gets a call and says she needs to answer it. And guess who it is? Her boss, telling her not to miss the chance to start this live stream, even though she says she's not feeling great for it. With not much choice, she agrees, saying she'll do it. The slimy girl keeps provoking, saying Gayen is coming. The girl asks if she's really going to do it, and Gayen, without much choice, agrees. So, the streamer battle begins. The girls start dancing. Zan, who's there watching the live, notices lots of rockets, lots of yachts arriving. The bad part is Gayen is falling behind. The girl decides to provoke even more to get more rockets. Gayen's audience doesn't understand why her performance is so weak. The competition is heating up. Seeing the whole situation, the prota also decides to pick up the phone and enter the live. He knows there's dirty play going on. The people in the live notice Gayan is tired. She was probably forced to do this. But when she was starting to lose, a rocket comes in. Gayan is shocked to realize he joined the live. She gets excited, thanking her brother, and saying she'll try harder. That's when a bunch of rockets start coming in. Her rival didn't like seeing the amount of rockets she got. She thinks Gayan has a secret donor, but the competition goes on. The girl, whose name I still don't know, is stressed. She's noticing the amount of money being spent. Gayan thanks for the number of rockets, but even she wonders if this isn't already too much. The protagonist questions if there's really a reason to keep this going. The system shows up again, saying he's being extravagant beyond comprehension, spending money like water. So, as a reward, he gets another 5 million. Zan responds to the prota saying no way. Even Ellen already stopped, but this guy keeps going. The world already expected it. The one doing this is the protagonist, pressing the rocket over and over again. In this case, Gayan can't believe the number of rockets anymore. That's when we see the Big Shots group, literally a WhatsApp group. One big shot says he can't let this one pass, and that he'll help Chewie. That's when he starts launching rockets. The girl thanks God the guy finally showed up and thanks for the gifts. The girl says her #1 fan has already asked for some private videos from her. But besides that, he's really rich and very generous, so he surely won't miss the chance to be a hero. But there's a catch, right folks? The bastard is competing with the protagonist. After earning so much money and so many rockets, Gayan completely changes her performance. Now she's much more energetic. The system is enjoying watching the protagonist spend so much, so it congratulates the protagonist with 10 million, and thus she is declared the winner. But even so, the protagonist doesn't stop. He sends another 1,000 rockets. So, with nothing else to do, the system gives him another small million. Gayan thanks everyone for the support, and especially the one who made her the champion. But she keeps saying that everyone worked hard for their money, so they shouldn't waste it like that on her. Everyone on the live is touched by her words. Her opponent is very angry. She made all that effort for nothing. She only made Gayan more famous. She earned a few million in donations, and most importantly, thousands of viewers. He thinks it's getting pretty late and decides to head back to bed. But before leaving, he calls for Senorita Lu, and we finally learn her real name. The prota tells her not to be discouraged. He thought her performance was very good, aside from the quite famous donors she has. In this case, with a lot of money, so she should keep working hard. Zan, who's right behind, comments that the protagonist's words probably made the girl furious. And really, they did. After this very long night, everyone leaves. The scene then shifts outside. Zan comments that the girl's plan was annihilated and asks if everyone saw her face at the end. She says today was enlightening. She got to see firsthand the biggest tycoon on the platform. But she asks Gayan why she's not excited. She replies that she doesn't feel worthy of it. She's never seen this guy, and he keeps giving absurd amounts of money to her. She feels a bit uncomfortable with it, but Zan says it doesn't matter. She's still going to approach this generous donor. She says she's going to send him a private message. Seconds later, she sent it, and the prota's phone beeps, saying he received a message. The two, noticing that, look back. Zan asks if that isn't a Shine platform notification. She just sent a message, and he just received a message. This is really strange. The protagonist asks why the two of them are looking at him like that. It's just a coincidence. He says he just got off work, so he's still receiving a lot of platform messages. He asks them to please not get the wrong idea. Gayan reflects on the matter. She says the protagonist spent a few million a while ago, but the person donating had to have billions to donate that much. The protagonist says that's exactly it. He does have a bit of money, but millions in a few minutes is too much. Zan says she's just thinking, it's because that donor has the same name the protagonist also has. What if it's him? Gayan, changing the subject, asks where the protagonist lives. She can take him and drop him off at home. He refuses, saying he lives in the opposite direction. He's going to take a taxi, that's better. But then, someone calls for Gayan. It's the sleazy boss of the prota. He says he thought the background looked too familiar. Good thing he managed to find her outside. But Gayan doesn't really like seeing him. Not realizing his employee is right there, the boss starts belittling the protagonist, saying he must have been invited by Gayan after all. He's broke. But Gayan replies that actually, she's the one depending on him. Today it was he who paid for dinner and the drinks. That's when the guy is shocked. He asks if Gayen is being serious. She fell for that guy and now she's covering for him? He says he already knows everything. Today the bill was paid by a mysterious guy. Actually, a mysterious person. So how did he pay for her drink? But the boss says he gets what's going on. There are those broke guys, but they have that smooth talk to win the girl and get money out of her. But Zan comments that it really was the protagonist who paid for all the drinks today. But the manager asks who gave her the right to speak. He turns to Zan and asks if she's getting full of herself just because she has a few fans, and tells her those fans are all paid. In this case, they're all fake. That, of course, shocks the girl. And he says that's exactly it. The company spent a lot of money buying fake followers for her. He keeps saying the girl is useless, since she doesn't make any money for the company. She should really learn from Gayen, who danced one night and earned millions. He humiliates Zan so much that she starts to sweat cold, getting really angry. But the bastard turns to Gayen. He asks if she hadn't said she wouldn't be a dance streamer anymore. She made a lot of money for the company today. Did an excellent job. If she agrees to a few more things, he can ask the boss to transfer her to TV. Touching Gayen, he says the little thing is just to spend a night with him. But before he can touch her, our protagonist shows up. He asks the manager to at least show some respect, but the manager snaps back, calling the protagonist a failure. He's trying to play the hero. Will this hero be able to give her the resources and money like he can? He won't be able to do all that. He better scram. So, the protagonist leaves. Leaving, Gayen tells the manager that if he touches her again, she will terminate her contract with the company. He laughs, asking if she's really going to terminate the contract. She signed a 5-year deal with the company and still has time left. If she ends it now, she'll have to pay a 10 million fine. Can she afford that? She replies that she earned millions for the company today. With her savings, does he really think she can't do that? To counter this insult, he starts calling her all sorts of names. Obviously, none of them are nice. He gets closer, saying he'll be honest. Even if she pays the debt, the company won't leave her alone. No company would let go of a cow that gives a lot of milk. If she leaves, she'll be blacklisted and won't be able to work anywhere. But the protagonist steps in again. He says that's fine, since she can't leave. He'll just buy their company. That way, it won't be Gayen who leaves, but him. Now the manager feels the boy's pressure, but he doesn't flinch. He says the protagonist is impressive. He says he'll be waiting for the protagonist, a broke and poor man, to buy the company. Okay, but he's already too annoyed. So, he just leaves. But Zan is still sad. She wonders if all those followers were really fake. This clearly gets her friend's attention. She starts to wonder if everything was really fake. The money, the donors, the followers. Was it all hired by the company? Gayen runs and grabs her hand, saying of course not. She says that bastard just wanted to bring her down. She shouldn't be upset by that piece of trash's words. Lupota just watches. Gayen thanks him for helping her today. She also thanks Zan for helping clarify everything today. Zan replies that it's no problem. If it weren't for Gayen, she wouldn't even know the manager despised and belittled her. Yeah, her. Then she goes into rage mode, calling that guy an asshole. Gayen turns to the protagonist, saying they're just colleagues, so he doesn't need to do so much for her. He says it's all right. He's hated that guy for a while now. Gayen likes hearing that. She reaches out, saying she doesn't know if she'll see the protagonist again, so she wishes him great achievements. Don't know why, but that surprises the protagonist. But it's all right. He shakes her hand and asks her to take care too. The girls get in the car and leave. Pulling out his phone, the protagonist says he was so busy and focused on sending rockets, he didn't even notice the notification sounds. The guy has a total of 109 million in his account now. Yes, he can consider himself a millionaire. He thinks he needs to hurry and buy a plane ticket to go home without wasting too much time. He already goes on the website. The train ticket really was much cheaper. He paid only 300 for it. But he buys it anyway, and the ticket price is simply 4,000. The system rewards not the best, but only the most expensive. And the money keeps flowing. But the protagonist already arrives at the dorm over there. He goes to sleep and, between one transition and another, the sun rises. Even with the sunlight on his face, the protagonist keeps sleeping. However, someone starts yelling that it's rent time. These screams wake the protagonist up immediately. He thinks it's always the same thing. A week before the date, she's already yelling and shouting. The person is already yelling for Rama, telling him to pay the rent, and not to pretend he's not home. The woman is yelling, and it's simply 6 in the morning. The woman keeps pounding the door until the prota answers. Right after, he opens the door. The landlady starts scolding the prota, saying he always forgets to pay the rent. Can't he be a little more responsible? But the protagonist pays a year's worth of rent. The woman, knowing that, is instantly shocked. The notification says 10,000 were transferred. The woman doesn't understand how he paid a year's rent. She always had to argue with him to pay. Looking at the phone, the woman says there's an extra 400, but the protagonist says it's all right. She should consider that the service fee. And that's so he won't be bothered while sleeping. Right after, the bastard closes the door. The woman doesn't understand anything, but if I were her, I'd be happy. I got a year of rent and 400 bucks. But without a second thought, the prota throws himself on the bed. He knows his flight is at 10, so he can sleep a little longer. His bunkmate below asks if he won the lottery, but the protagonist is already asleep. The little system pops up saying that when he paid a year of rent, he surpassed himself. The reward is a villa at Swan Bay, in the city of Xi'an. The guy simply won a villa. Yes, a villa. Obviously, the rascal wakes up instantly. He chokes on that sudden news. Looking at the keys in his hand, he thinks, I didn't win a house, man. I won a villa. And guys, before I forget, the protagonist woke up yesterday with 39,000 and went to sleep with 85 million. That's the amount in this man's account. A tiny important detail, right? That we can't skip after news like that. The protagonist already puts on his clothes. Now he's so hyped, he even turns into a monkey, jumping from the bed and landing in a hero pose. His friend even asks where he's going in such a rush, but he says he's going back home. He heads straight to the airport. Oh, and he doesn't come back for a while. The friend asks if he's not going to pack, and he replies that he doesn't even need to. The story switches to the prota's parents. He says Hang called and said he's coming back today. His dad says he doesn't know what got into him, but he sent 100,000. His mom doesn't understand what kind of part-time job pays that much. His mom hopes it's nothing illegal, but the dad knows it's not. They know exactly what kind of son they raised. That's when our protagonist shows up. He already asks how his mom's feeling and if she has any discomfort. The mom says she's fine, a little sick, but nothing serious. The mom complains he came there. The dad had already told him he didn't need to. The dad hands him an apple and asks how work is going, but the protagonist says he quit. The mom and dad are surprised, asking if he really did that. But it's okay, they accept it. After all, they raised their son with excellence and are sure he'll find a better job soon. Hang is happy with this support. After all, your parents are your safe harbor. Hang then asks his dad if he already paid the medical bills. The dad says not to worry, that he'll return the 100,000. The young man, like the protagonist, will probably need money. But the protagonist says he doesn't need it. That money is for him and his mom. And he asks, where's dad getting money to lend? He's gonna pay it back fast? The dad says he borrowed it from some relatives. The protagonist gets furious, asking if he borrowed money from his uncle and aunt. Stressed, he leaves, asking the dad to pay them back immediately. But the dad grabs the protagonist's arm. He says he'll pay them back as soon as possible, and that the protagonist doesn't need to worry about it. What's hard is working hard and giving all the money to the family. Hearing that, the mom cries, blaming herself for the situation. She complains about the protagonist working hard in the city to pay medical expenses, and she knows well that he gives all his money and lives a miserable life there. But the protagonist smiles, saying it's not that hard. She's just imagining it. The protagonist says he's fine, that it wasn't that hard to save up that 100,000. And he adds that he came there to improve her medical treatment. Now he's going to his uncle's house to pay that damn debt. Sometime later, the prota is outside the hospital, getting in the tuk-tuk. He gives the location of where he wants to go. I don't even know if the name is really Tuk, but I think Tuk fits well, right? The problem with riding this princess carriage is that it shakes a lot. The road is all full of holes. He asks the driver if they weren't talking about fixing the road. The driver says they did fix it, but it's worse than before. There was embezzlement, and the roads ended up like this. The protagonist complains, saying things are already hard there, and the guy still managed to steal. If his family wasn't financially stable, he probably wouldn't have a good education and would be stuck there for life. But he finally arrives at the damn uncle's house. What irritates the protagonist the most is that their land is huge, while his dad's is tiny. That's because those bastards stole almost all of the prota's grandfather's money. What was supposed to be divided equally, they took most of it. And of course, anyone would be mad knowing they were robbed. Even I have an aunt like that. But anyway, the protagonist wants to get this over with and pay those damn 50,000. So, he knocks on the door. Apparently, he has a beautiful cousin. I ask because Young Ju is at his uncle's house. Apparently, she's not his cousin. He still wonders why she's there. Protagonist, why would such a dangerous woman be at your uncle's house? But that's when his annoying cousin shows up, and we find out the real reason she's there. The protagonist realizes it too, and now he gets it. But he walks straight in and wants to know if his uncle is home. He came to pay the damn debt. The girl wonders why the protagonist is so cold. Does he still have feelings for her? But with a slap, that mysterious cousin calls the girl's attention. He asks why the girl is looking at the protagonist. After all, she's about to become his wife. But the girl says she's just looking to see how pathetic the protagonist is. Even living in the big city, he's still a loser. She adds that the countryside is much better. But inside the house, the protagonist reaches his uncle. The uncle introduces the nephew, saying he's now a city man. The uncle's friends smile and ask if the protagonist makes a lot of money over there. The nosy one jumps in saying the protagonist does make a lot. He works like a horse to make 5,000 a month, provoking even more. The cousin asks, out of those 5,000, how much does the protagonist manage to save each month? But the protagonist doesn't really care. He tells the uncle he came there to pay his debt. He wants to skip the small talk, but the guys are more focused on the game. The uncle tells Hang he doesn't need to rush. His family is struggling, he understands that. Later on, he'll charge some interest anyway, so it's fine. Even with the protagonist insisting on paying, the uncle says he doesn't need to be polite. He knows how hard the protagonist works in the city to support the family. The protagonist says okay, but he's going to pay the debt anyway. The uncle agrees, since the protagonist insists so much. Then he asks his son Dakai to get the red book on the shelf. Dakai says everyone there is family, so they don't need to be under so much pressure. Already with the phone in hand, the protagonist says he transferred 51,000, including the interest the uncle added. The uncle grabs the phone to see if the transfer was made. This surprises him, seeing it really went through. He asks the protagonist how he got that money. Already turning to leave, the protagonist says it was by working in the city, of course. Dakai says that's probably all the savings the protagonist had. So he's sure the protagonist spent everything. The girl says she'll walk the protagonist to the door. Now they're all family, and he'll have to get used to her being around. The guy just agrees, thinking that's good. The girl walks up to Ran, saying they'll be family now. The protagonist doesn't need to hold on to old feelings and act like he doesn't know her. She continues saying they're childhood friends. They grew up together and most of all, she knows he likes her. But she always saw him as her little brother. Hearing all this, the protagonist is speechless. He turns around. He likes her? He asks her to please look in the mirror. And really, guys, that one's not the woman for our protagonist, the girl yells, asking if he really said that. The protagonist asks what she's talking about. Childhood friends? They're, at most, acquaintances who played together as kids. But now she acts like she's special. The protagonist says he believed she was a better girl. But in the end, she's just a gold digger. She really is very good at pretending. But whatever, that's not his business anymore. The girl says she understands. The protagonist can't have her, so now it's one less prey. But in the end, she's his sister-in-law, so he has to understand. The past should stay in the past. The protagonist realizes she misunderstood everything, but seeing he's already wasted too much time, and to keep this from turning into a drama, he just turns and walks away. This clearly irritates the girl. She steps in front of him. She asks, who does the protagonist think he is just because he's good at studying?
Thinks he's better than everyone? He's very, very wrong. Yes, she looks down on the poor and adores the rich. So what? With the uncle's family, she'll live in a giant house and eat the best food? Meanwhile, he'll be in a cubicle back in the city. Besides his mother, hospitals are bottomless pits. It's no use spending 50, 100,000. He'll definitely get nowhere. He should be thankful she's being polite with him. The protagonist asks if this crazy girl is done.
And she, staring at the sky, doing nothing useful or good, keeps thinking everyone's dying to be with her. Not even frogs are that dumb. Annoyed, the girl points her finger in the protagonist's face to end the conversation. He tells her to stop acting crazy and really look in the mirror. She needs to face reality. The little system pops up, as always. He made a clean cut. As a reward, he got an apartment in the city of Bayu. The girl keeps pointing at the protagonist and won't stop complaining. Tired of it, the protagonist grabs her little hand, points her finger back at her, and tells her to stop bothering. That way, our Sigma guy heads on his way. But a car speeds past him, splashing mud everywhere. Obviously, it's the greasy cousin inside the car. He says he didn't even see the protagonist, so he apologizes. Says he's heading to a construction site, which he now owns, by the way. But he doesn't have time to talk, so he says goodbye. Before that, he mentions that if the protagonist is looking for work, just go to him. There are some bricks there to carry. The protagonist understands why the roads are so bad, apparently. So now it's time to bring justice to the people. Time passes, and we're already in front of the city's construction department. A man says goodbye to the protagonist, saying he's free to come back there for tea anytime. The protagonist wakes up, saying he will definitely do that. The system announces that the host delivered justice and, as a reward, received 100 property deeds. The protagonist, shocked, asks how many deeds the system is talking about. Did he hear that right? The system replies that it was 100 deeds. Did he think that was too little? These rewards are based on the protagonist's actions. The protagonist apologizes. He's not blaming the system. The problem is, the system keeps getting stranger. It seems like all the world's wealth is ending up in the protagonist's world. The protagonist is already at the hospital acting like her guardian. A doctor enters, saying the surgery was a success. The indicators have returned to normal. He's going to discharge her, but the protagonist questions, why did his mother have surgery just yesterday? She should remain under observation. She can't be discharged just like that. But the doctor says he already told him she's being discharged. He asks the nurses to help the patient pack her things. With a knife in hand, the protagonist asks, what did he just say? His mother, seeing the situation, calls out to him. The doctor says that's exactly what he said. Didn't the protagonist understand? The patient is already improving, so he'll free the room for another patient. Rand slams the knife on the table. The doctor shouts, saying he's holding a knife in the hospital. Does he want to cause trouble? Either he puts down that knife, or the doctor will call security. His mother gets up, saying she prefers to go home. There's no reason for them to stay there spending more money. A doctor says she really understands. A good son should listen to his mother. Turning to the nurses, he asks them to make sure everything is clean. He doesn't want any trace of poverty or bad luck there. Hearing that, the protagonist is outraged. He tells his mother he's going out, but she asks him to be careful and not start any trouble. After all, they're ordinary people and not equipped for that. But the protagonist says not to worry. He won't do anything that involves force. The doctor is already in his office talking on the phone. Guess what this fool is saying? He's chatting with that greasy cousin, the one I still don't like. But the doctor didn't expect something. The protagonist was listening to everything. He already suspected this was a bribery situation. But that's fine. If they want to play the money game, will he test to see if money can make the impossible happen? We're already at the director's office. Hearing someone knocking on the door, the director tells them to come in. Seeing it's Han coming in, he asks who he is. But our boy simply replies that he's just a regular patient. The doctor then tells him to go to the registration desk. He doesn't see patients here. But the protagonist says he's there to donate a building to the hospital. The director says, okay. He just needs to go to reception and they'll handle it. He's too busy right now to pay attention to the protagonist. But then it hits him, and he realizes the protagonist said, a building. He asks if the protagonist knows how much it costs to donate an entire construction. Looking closely, he sees the protagonist is wearing simple clothes. So how does he want to donate a building? Is he joking? But our boy says he already knows. He's looked at everything, and that won't be a problem for him. So can they proceed with the process? The protagonist says he knows the emergency room is always crowded. It's always high traffic with little space. It would be a great place to house post-surgery patients. That's why he wants to donate the building. The only thing he wants in return is for the director to investigate any signs of corruption. Closing his book, the doctor understands that you can't please everyone. Really, there are many complaints about beds, but there's also no need for suspicions of corruption. The protagonist replies that he knows the director can't do anything about the lack of beds. However, some people take advantage of that to make dirty money. They give out beds, which are already scarce, to special connections. This time, the director stands up, irritated. He says he's been in this administration for years, along with the two doctors, but he's never accepted a bribe. Never. The protagonist explains that his mother just came out of surgery. She was supposed to stay bedridden, but the doctor simply forced her discharge, all just to make space for another patient. He even knows that the other patient only has a sprained ankle. Even so, he's stealing a bed from someone who just had surgery. Not believing it, the doctor yells that he's just making things up. Even if their ER is super crowded, they wouldn't discharge someone who just had surgery. However, if the protagonist wants to continue with this story, at least present some solid proof. That's when the protagonist responds, "Say no more, boss. Just grab the recording and listen." That recording has the whole conversation between Dakai and the doctor there. But that's not enough. The doctor asks the protagonist, "How do you know that recording isn't fake?" The protagonist says, "Fine. Even if the recording is fake, the building isn't. So he'll find a way." He calls Chief Engineer Kang and says he'd like to build a new building for the municipal hospital. Does Kang have a moment to discuss? If so, could he stop by the hospital director's office just to go over a few details? After making the call, the boy asks the director if he doesn't have a moment to listen to Chief Kang. Of course, it's just a call to prove it's really Kang. Then they'll schedule something properly. Agreeing, Mr. Liu picks up the phone. The director introduces himself and starts listening to who's speaking. Kang says he's a lucky guy, got a building for free. And the blessed director finally realizes it really is Engineer Kang on the line. He says he understands everything. Later, they schedule to talk. Let him hang up, now that there's something more important to do. With both seated, the protagonist asks if he believes him now. He should also give an answer about the recording. If he can donate a building, why would he fake a recording? The doctor says fine, but the recording itself isn't sufficient proof. The protagonist thinks, if one building isn't enough, should he give two? Standing up, the boy says he has no other requests. He only hopes the director punishes the corrupt. Before he leaves, the director asks him to wait. But after all, what's the boy's name? The protagonist says he's just a humble boy from a simple family of farmers. His name isn't important, but if he wants to write one down, just put Messenger of Justice. H. What's your position? Shame on you, straighten up, scoundrel. In the very next second, the doctor is grabbing the phone. He asks for the records of the most recent discharges to be brought immediately. He's going to review the discharge of each patient. After some time, the nurse calls for Dr. Lee. She says the director is calling for him. Whoa, man. Looks like trouble hit. Because the guy's already on his knees. He's begging the director not to fire him. He has elderly parents and a small child. If he gets fired, how will he support the whole family? Mr. Lee doesn't want to hear it. He has elderly parents and small children, huh? But didn't the patients also deserve a doctor with morals? Without morals, go look for a job somewhere else. Then the scene shifts to Dakai and the protagonist's ex, but she says Dakai's career is booming. Soon, they'll be able to buy a house in the city. But then someone bursts through the door shouting, "Dakai! I don't know who this dude is, but he's pretty pissed." Dakai says he had connections everywhere, even bribed doctors. But as soon as they got to the hospital, his wife was sent away. And now he's the one screwed. Can barely enter the room. His wife's furious, completely lost. Dakai gets up, splashing water everywhere. He just asks for a minute. He's going to call his partner and try to understand this mess. Whoa, but pulling out his phone, he realizes he's screwed. The phone says the number he dialed simply doesn't exist. We're already in the Ang family courtyard. A bunch of materials are being delivered. Yang's mother asks if those materials weren't too expensive. But the protagonist says no, actually not. The hospital paid for everything. They didn't spend a single penny. That corrupt doctor was punished. And as a reward, the hospital is sending those materials. The protagonist's mother, who doesn't think too deeply, says okay, she understands. But then, out of nowhere, someone comes yelling for Yang. Sorry if I'm confusing y'all guys. Sometimes I call him Xing, and other times Yang. I'll stick with Yang to not confuse anyone, alright? It's Dakai saying he got a room for his brother at the hospital. But for that, he had to spend 10,000 that now is all gone. The protagonist's mother asks what Dakai is talking about. Before Dakai answers, the protagonist thinks this is perfect. The idiot just admitted everything. The boy says so it was him. For a long time, he wondered who got his mother discharged right after her surgery. In the end, it was his dear relative who spent 10,000 to get her out. Realizing the mistake, Dakai says, he wasn't the one who discharged his mother. It's normal to be discharged after improvement, but the protagonist has to stop pretending. If he hadn't pulled the strings behind the scenes, would the hospital have done all that for him? Hold on, the protagonist defends himself. He says it's all because of Director Lee. It was all to compensate for the corruption scheme that affected his mother. Dakai asks the boy if he's supposed to believe that lie. The kid knows how long it took him to get all that many connections at the hospital. He and his brother had to work hard to achieve that. The protagonist just says what he says makes no sense. The boy isn't super rich, not a boss making millions a year. It makes no sense for him to go extort money from a poor person. He should ask himself, a guy like the protagonist, making less than 5,000 a month, whose house rent already takes almost everything, could he really have the power to mess with someone as influential as him? Walking away, the protagonist says, maybe it's just karma in life. Some people in this life think dirty money solves everything, but sometimes it doesn't fix everything, does it? Not arguing and leaving the property, Dakai says all the poor are going to die. In this case, all the poor in his family, but the protagonist doesn't really care. He just thinks that's a really dumb thing. Hang's mother says Dakai seemed pretty furious. Could he try to do something bad to them? Confident, the boy says he'd love to see him try. A few minutes later, we see two cars speeding. Dakai notices that car looked a lot like Manager Kang's. Engineer, actually. But it didn't just look like it. It really was his car. Kang arrives holding a chicken and a fish. He thanks Wong a lot for the help with that ladder and that building. They were breathtaking. Downplaying the protest, Manager Kang is very generous. He just saw his car broken down on the road in front of a building earlier and decided to help. That's all. Kang says that really was it. But actually, he realized the protagonist is trying to hide his identity. He's not going to admit he had the building and roads made. Hugging Kang, the protagonist tells his mother he'll go ahead. He has something to deliver to the manager. Right after, he asks the manager to stop saying those things. He wants to do it, but without taking credit, you know? Walking out embraced with good friends, Kang says the request the protagonist made today has already been fulfilled. And the protagonist says the guy really is efficient. In the next scene, Dakai is on the phone with Mr. Zal. Mr. Zal says that regarding the road repairs, he doesn't need to be involved for now. This catches the boy completely off guard. Shocked, he simply starts to slow down. The boy says everything was already agreed upon. He had even arranged the workers' schedules. So how can he only be told this now? And what about the lost wages? Zal says there's a new regulation in the construction sector. Unfortunately, because of that, his team was disqualified. Didn't pass the inspection. But that's all for now. He has other things to do. So, they'll talk later. After that, he just hangs up the phone. Doesn't even wait for a response. The boy realizes all his schemes have fallen apart. Both the hospital and the roads. In his office, he says he had no choice. The boy offended Manager Kang. We see a pack of cigarettes. Yes, that's 4 boxes of cigarettes. Dakai is trying to talk to Mr. Zal, saying they had a deal. He would build the road and Mr. Zal would take his cut. That's it. Wouldn't even need to lift a finger. We look at this scene and don't get it, right? Start wondering why Mr. Zal is sitting with 2 women. Yeah, my friend. Let me explain something. He actually owns a nightclub. Putting the cigarettes on the table, Dakai asks if they could adjust the percentage from 30% to 40%. It would be better for him. Mr. Zal makes a face like, now we're talking. Then the boy thinks he got it. The only thing he wanted was to raise the percentage. So it was just a matter of increasing it a bit to keep the deal going. He says everyone knows this qualification review is just a formality. That being the case, he can easily find a front company to pass the process again. Throwing the cigarettes aside, and very angry, Mr. Zal asks the boy, who said qualification documents can be faked? He thinks bringing a few cigarettes can fix everything? Is he some beggar accepting bribes? Now the boy tries to play it off, saying no, he wasn't saying that. Mr. Zal then asks what he was trying to say. He thinks the old man is just playing hard to get. He says no, that's not it. But okay, he'll now give 50%, half and half, even split. That just makes the old man even angrier. He tells the boy to get out now. Whoa! I thought the kid would walk out, but it looks like he was simply thrown out of the nightclub. There he went with cigarettes, floor, and everything. But hold on. We've got another room in the nightclub. In this one, the receptionist is asking Mr. Zal to please come in. Is this nightclub not Mr. Zal's? Up to this point, I thought it was. But maybe it's not, right? Anyway, in this other room are the protagonist and Kang. Mr. Zal thanks the protagonist for being so kind. He helped the town build the road. The protagonist isn't fooled by these compliments. He knows that's pure hypocrisy. Dilson Rosal is a real opportunist. That's why he says it's no big deal. He's not interested in matters of an old and messy village. He's only doing all of this for his parents. They're getting older, so they can't have trouble walking. If the road's bad, they might twist an ankle, end up getting hurt, and that would be really bad. With that in mind, he asks this old crook if this road is going to fall apart again in a year. It won't, right? There's no way he'll do that. That kind of catches Mr. Zal off guard, huh? Because that's exactly what was going to happen. But this time he'll let it slide because the kid is rich. And then he says, even spitting, he won't disappoint the boy's expectations. That's a promise. Then suddenly our little system just comes back. It had been a while since it showed up, right, my friend? It says the construction of the road and houses in his hometown, his native city, has been completed. That showed the boy's high moral character. As a reward, the system will give him a bonus. The boy says even he was wondering where the system was. It hadn't appeared in days. Apparently it was planning something big. Leaving the protagonist aside, we see the second uncle's garden. There's shouting going on there. And who's shouting is the protagonist's ex. She says Dakai has been lying down playing all day. Didn't wash a dish. Didn't clean the house. Isn't helping at all. If she had known everything he said was a lie, she would have chosen Aang. At least he was in the city trying to find real opportunities. Man, that line got to the boy. He gets up furious, asking her what did she just say. But do you think the girl backs down? She doesn't care at all. Says he really is useless. That's exactly what he heard. If she were him, she'd be kneeling to Mr. Zal right now. Turning and leaving, she says she'll find him. They grew up together, so it shouldn't be too hard to win him back. That really pisses off the boy. And now he grabbed her. What is this, man? A man who hits a woman gets beaten up by another man. And badly. It's the kind of thing that lands you in the hospital. Leaving that fight aside, we see someone handing over some papers to Aang's family. But they don't understand what those papers mean. We see that it's Kang handing them over. He says the road construction will take 1 meter from their house. And to express forgiveness, they plan to build a new house for the family. That would serve as compensation for covering 1 meter. The parents can't even believe what they're hearing. Kang asks if that's not acceptable. He should add monetary compensation too. That's when the family really doesn't understand. Since when is the village this lucky? They're compensating a house for just 1 meter, and worse, even offering money. The mother says it's not necessary. That's already more than enough. While the father is shouting for the protagonist. Looks like they're going to move and get a brand new house. A few days later, at the bus station, the protagonist is telling his father and mother that he's heading back now. The mother asks him to work less, not to overwork himself. I mean, work hard, but don't kill himself. Next time he comes home, they'll be moving to a bigger house, God willing. Aang tells her not to worry. Everything will work out. Now walking, he says goodbye. In the next scene, he's already in the first-class lounge. Someone there is calling him. It's our dangerous Guyen, asking what he's doing there. He doesn't get what she's doing there either, but he explains he came to his hometown to see his mother, but now he's heading back. Then the girl remembers that all this time she didn't ask how his mother was doing, considering he left the company because of that. But better late than never. So she asks how his mother is. The protagonist says she's recovering well. Now it's not something serious. The girl replies that's very good, but she's there for a work trip. The company wanted her to change her image, so she came to work on a rural revitalization campaign. She finished not long ago. So that's why she's heading back. It really is quite the coincidence that they met at the airport. The girl asks if he has any plans once he's back, which company he plans to apply to. But of course, if he doesn't want to answer, That's fine. The protagonist says it's no secret. He no longer plans to join another company, but now he's going to start his own business. Out of spite, that rascal rented a building in front of his old company, just to annoy the former boss. What a mischievous kid. Nagawan says that's really cool, and if he needs anything, just let her know. She knows some great editors, some photographers who aren't too expensive. Interrupting the conversation, someone calls Gayen. She apologizes and says she has to take the call now. Answering the call, she realizes it's the old boss. And apparently, he's really chewing her out. He tells the girl to get online now and compete with the GAD team. The audience is tagging the girl. It's been an hour. Gayen says she gave notice. She's about to board. And the worst part is the boss had said it was okay. But the jerk says she hasn't even boarded the plane yet, so she'll have to do it before boarding. The girl says it's not possible, that she's about to get on. And the next flight is only in 10 hours. Besides, she might not even get a ticket. The boss says he doesn't care. The girl thinks the company is helping her out of goodwill. If by chance she misses the flight, just wait 10 hours at the airport, and the problem's solved. The annoyed one asks, she's already made enough money for the company. She's been at the top for 6 months. No one is helping her with anything. The boss asks what her contract is like. It's still with him. Until it ends, she has to follow orders. And the bastard even argues, putting his hand where he shouldn't. Can you believe it? With no way out, Gayen just accepts. But the protagonist calls out to her, and the boss ends up hearing his voice. Richilio says now he gets everything. That's why she's unavailable. She's probably not even at the airport. She's probably in one of those adult four-walled rooms, you know? The one with just a bed and nothing else? Yeah, that one. The girl gets extremely offended and tells him to stop spreading those rumors. She even took a photo of the boarding ticket and sent it to the company group chat. Reichu then asks her to prove it. All she has to do is go live and everything will be fine. Then, instead of being on a bed, she'll prove she's at the airport. Poor Gayen is really angry, but there's not much she can do. But that's when the protagonist grabs her phone. He asks how much the contract termination fee is, because this time he's going to make a point of paying it. And by the way, this call is being recorded. He's going to make a point of suing Richulio for defamation. Already seated, Rexui keeps talking, telling the protagonist to stop pretending to be rich. Can he really afford the contract termination? The protagonist doesn't even answer. He simply hangs up in that jerk's face. Gayen says he's joking, right? He's not really going to pay that contract termination. No way. In fact, deep down the girl doesn't believe he's worthy of such kindness. So she tells Proto that her situation in the company isn't that bad. Rexui is annoying sometimes, but it's not that big a problem. At this moment, they're going to demand a ridiculous amount for the termination fee. It's not worth giving that satisfaction to the company. He tells her not to worry. She doesn't need to feel bad about this. It's all good. He's doing it for his own benefit. He's starting a media company, and she's right in front of the Mion group, so he needs to find some decent familiar faces. It would be a good way to start the company. What better for recognition than to steal some of their talents? Hen is impressed that Aang is going to start a company to rival the company. The kid really is tough. The boy already says that the salary he can offer is full commission, with half of the earnings going to cover the termination fee. After that, it can be 70-30, 30 for him and 70 for her. Hearing those words, Gayen is happy. If the protagonist isn't a kind person, then who would be? Seeing her little face, Proto asks if she thinks the percentage is too low right away. Of course she says no. That's not it. In fact, that percentage is very high. He doesn't even need to help her that much. For a streaming company, splitting 50% would already be very good. But since she has that termination fee, giving 20 to 30% to her would be acceptable and normal. So yeah, 70-30, that's a dream company. The protagonist tells Gayen that she was the only one. Literally the only person who didn't look down on him in Group 61. So he's just returning kindness with kindness. Besides, he feels like she's going to bring him a lot of money someday. Gayen says that, in that case, fine. She accepts. Time passes. They've already arrived in the city. And they didn't wait long. They went straight to the Mion group. The protagonist is already face-to-face with Rexui. The jerk asks Gayen if she really believes what the protagonist says when he's in four walls there. Surely, he wasn't in the right state of mind. If she believes him and it's all lies, she might very well fall into disgrace. The little bro already interrupts, telling him to stop wasting time and call the legal team already. Today he didn't come there to argue. The ex-boss stands up asking if he knows how much Gayan is worth now. Does he really think he can pay her contract termination fee? He even heard the protagonist made some money. But he's not that loaded. Besides, it's good to remember that those who get rich too fast don't know how to manage money. They can lose everything just as quickly. When the boy ends up in debt, he'll definitely fall into ruin. The protagonist slaps his hand away and says that money is renewable. The more you spend, the more you have. Ah, if only life really worked like that. The boy also comments that, the way he's losing his patience, now the boss is definitely scared he really can pay. Yeah, looks like he really caught the boss off guard. Shui says the company isn't his. He's not the only one who spends, nor the only one who earns. So what should he be afraid of? The protagonist puts his hand on his face, completely outraged. Seriously, this guy's a dummy. He's really worried about that ex-boss's future. Hearing that, the guy gets all worked up. He even calls the protagonist a dog. The protagonist says no, no, no. He's a legally employed worker who signed a work contract. If that little boss wants to call him a dog again, there's going to be a lawsuit. And according to the company clause, even after Prota leaves, he can't go around spreading rumors. So if he keeps that nonsense about 4 walls between him and Gayan, there's going to be a lawsuit too. The guy is already asking Gayan to sign the contract. Gayan says it's fine, she'll sign. Rexui asks again if she's sure. I think he still doesn't get it. Gayan is clearly totally sure. She already signed just so nothing bad can happen. Rexui says, well, the contract termination has been signed. Now, where's the money? The protagonist asks him to calm down. He already checked the bank account. The bank transfer was made a minute ago. The problem is that Rexui doesn't really believe it. What do you mean? He made a 10 million transfer just like that? The protagonist tells the idiot that if he doesn't believe it, he should check with finance. Ask the fool. Reaching the windows, the protagonist says, being in administration is really nice. The view from the building is wonderful. From now on, he and the manager will have a long future ahead. Suddenly, the system pops up congratulating the host. He understood the true essence of spending money. Money only grows when you spend. As a reward, he earned 99 million. Already outside the building, someone calls for Gayan, and Wang is Zan, who is running over. It had been a while since she appeared. Zan comments she just heard that Gayan quit. So, will they be able to meet in the future? Gayan was about to answer, but the protagonist cuts her off. He says he sees no problem with that. They'll meet at the commercial building just ahead. If she wants, she can even go to the cafeteria and have lunch with them. The girl doesn't quite understand this thing about being in the building up front. Interrupting the conversation, the protagonist's phone rings. He tells the girls he has to answer. Anne steps a bit away. Someone on the phone tells him the ownership certificate is ready and asks when he would like to pick it up. The protagonist replies soon. He'll go soon. The woman says that's fine. They'll be waiting for his visit. Poor protagonist almost forgot he still needed to inspect that village. Right. If I'm not mistaken, the protagonist had won an entire village. Remember? Along with the buildings, he also got a village. Saying goodbye, he tells Gayan to rest a bit and plan their business. He needs to handle some babies that appeared. The girl says it's fine, no problem. Right after, she answers her friend's question. He really paid the contract termination fee. Razan still can't believe the old office study guy was actually the rich tycoon. Really, you can't judge a book by its cover. Apparently. Seeing the village, someone says the VIP client is arriving. Everyone must stay alert and not disrespect him. The one saying this is the woman who was on the call with the protagonist. She already asks Manager Wang to make everything perfect. Nothing can go wrong. Manager Wang tells her not to worry. He'll handle everything now. That's when he starts shouting, calling the whole crew. With everyone gathered, he begins to explain. Senor Ang bought the village for 300 million onion, and he's already arriving. Everyone must go to the entrance to wait for him. Turning to Irene, he says this guest is very important. They can't be careless at all. She says that's fine. But is there no photo of him? What if by any chance they greet the wrong person? The manager answers he's a mysterious tycoon. How could they have a photo of him? Rich people like Sang usually have a strong presence. As soon as he arrives, everything will light up. Running his hand on the wall, he notices it's all dusty. That's when he shouts to the whole bunch, "Come on everyone, do a big cleaning. That place needs to be shining." After that, some time passes, and finally the boy arrives. As soon as he gets out of the car, he starts getting impressed. Even the sales office is impressive. Of course, that was expected from the Rensheng brand. What the protagonist really doesn't understand is why there are so many people at the entrance. The protagonist enters and, apparently, he wasn't welcomed. No one noticed he was the client. It's kind of complicated, right? They were waiting for the tycoon and the protagonist shows up in a taxi. I think even I would have stood there frozen inside. The boy doesn't understand. The sales office is huge, but there's no one inside. This village is starting to seem a little suspicious. Looking at the model, Proto notices the landscaping of the village area is really beautiful. There's even a pool for each house. Irene approaches him and greets him. She asks what kind of house he'd like to see. She insists on showing now. But then the manager calls her. Manager Wang tells the girl he made it clear not to receive other clients. Why isn't she properly managing the entrance? The girl questions that he's still a client. He can still buy a house. But the manager says the VIP client will be arriving soon. That place has to be completely empty. He might feel disrespected. Irene says that doesn't seem very right. They didn't even put up a notice. The manager then says to leave it to him. The girl is still very naive. Probably that guy doesn't even have 200 years in his pocket, and yet he dares to enter there to buy a house. Just laughing, really. The manager arrives already scolding. He says some people don't know their place. If he can't buy, then he should leave. And if he wants to buy, he should be quick. Just say buy and get out. The protagonist doesn't understand. He asks if the guy is talking about him out of nowhere. The manager turns to Irene now and orders her to clean everything there. It's full of dust. The VIP client will be arriving soon. He can't question the place's cleanliness. Aang asks the manager how he would know if it's good or not. How will he know if it's suitable for him or not? The manager says by the appearance. He doesn't even have 200 years. The houses there cost 300,000 ands. The protagonist says the administration there doesn't seem very good. People judge by appearances. He thinks the house isn't worth the price. But the manager tells him he's only saying that because he can't pay. The protagonist finds that funny, because his phone just rang. The person on the phone asks if he already arrived at the sales office. If he has any questions, he can ask Manager Wang. The manager finds that voice very familiar, and the protagonist doesn't waste time. He says that manager isn't very good. He said the protagonist was embarrassing himself and not worthy of buying a house. So the boy thinks it's better to buy somewhere else. Better cancel the deal. The woman stands up saying he shouldn't sit down for a bit. She's coming. Surely some misunderstanding happened. So please, he should wait and not leave. Next chapter, she's already telling her driver to go straight to Bahia dos Cisnes as fast as possible. Wang Yang, inside the car, is scolding Anne on the phone. He tells her not to worry. He'll handle everything. Apparently, he finally realized. Apparently not. He tells Irene he told her to clear the area, but she didn't listen. Now he's stressed. The protagonist realizes he's very dumb. By the look he gave before, the protagonist thought he had recognized the voice, but apparently he was wrong. That idiot grabs Irene's ear. He says, "What good is being pretty if you can't work properly?" Now because of her, his job is at risk. The poor girl can only cry, can't even speak properly. To make everything worse, Manager Wang pushes the protagonist and orders him to get lost as fast as possible. He's poor, and nobody cares about him. That's when our dear director arrives, and Aang is still there fighting with the protagonist, asking if he didn't see that he should leave quickly. He turns to greet the manager, but she just walks by. In his crazy mind, the director is upset because the boy is still there. But of course, she isn't. She already bows to Proto and greets him. She said, "Alien, the vice general manager of the real estate." Wanning apologizes many times. Clearly, Manager Wang was totally disrespectful. The manager is very lost, not understanding anything anymore. Her words start to improve the situation, but Proto still isn't happy. Waning says they will improve management there. They'll do everything to prevent discrimination in the future. Irene now understands the VIP is the boss. Meanwhile, the vice director is there asking for just one more chance. The ex-manager finally speaks. He asks the director if this is really serious. How can this boy be that rich client? The director says she already warned many times. Never underestimate any client. But the guy simply ignored her words. The ex-manager thinks he's really screwed now. Waning says he got arrogant just because he sells properties. Starting tomorrow, he doesn't even have to come anymore. From now on, he's fired. Quickly, Anne kneels on the floor. Anne kneels on. He begs the director not to do this. He has elderly parents and children to support, besides the car mortgage. Funny, right? In this business, guys always have the same excuse when fired. Grabbing the director's leg, he says she knows his situation. Waning should have thought about that before. This is a company, son, not a charity institution. If you mess up, you're out. Seeing the situation isn't improving, he goes and grabs the protagonist. But we know our boy won't give a second chance. Irene thinks now it's over, that the manager will fall soon after. But that's when the protagonist says she's a good salesperson. The director should make her the new manager. Aining replies, "No problem. Clearly she will." So, can they see the property now? The protagonist says it's getting late, but he can still see the property. Owning replies, "Definitely. She'll personally take him there." Meanwhile, Irene is trying to face reality. She can't even believe she just got promoted. Could this be a dream again? The system appears. It says Proto is brave and fair. He fights against discrimination. As a reward, he'll get a little heart. The protagonist doesn't understand what that heart is for. He wants a more practical reward. The system says it's simply a personal compliment. But he shouldn't underestimate the system's compliments. They can be useful at crucial moments. But of course, the protagonist doesn't believe much in that. He's just discovering the system jokes around. Time passes. We are at the courtyard leading to the village entrance. Yeah, that takes money, my friend. The property gates open. Everyone is there waiting for Proto. Those are the staff responsible for security and property management. Inside, Manning called the protagonist to settle some things. Some papers, some recognition systems he'll need to access the house. Then, one of the employees comes to deliver a briefcase to her. Awning says all the property documents are inside. She's handing it to him for review before signing. The protagonist immediately agrees. Of course, that's a 300 million property. He has to look closely. Opening the briefcase, we see the ownership certificate. Looking and analyzing, the protagonist realizes this certificate seems really important, worthy of someone premium. But he doesn't even care. He throws it inside, closes it, and says, "Show me the way. Leave that for later." Aining can't believe it. This guy really is a tycoon. A 300 million property doesn't even bother him. The damn guy didn't even look at the property deeds. With not much else to do, she asks Proto to lead the way. She says amazing landscapers were hired for the village's private garden. The interior was decorated by a renowned international designer. Analyzing, Proto realizes the landscape is really beautiful. But considering his parents' preference, there should be a really good vegetable garden. Continuing walking and analyzing, the protagonist thinks everything there is amazing, something expected from a luxury residential area. But still, it would be cool to plant some green beans or bitter melons. Owning already tells him that if he's unhappy with anything, he can contact the designers to change everything. The protagonist says interesting. He'll think about it a lot. He thinks he definitely needs some changes. The system already screams arrogance. The host found many reasons not to like the 300 million property, all in just 1 minute. But as a reward, he unlocked 99,000 points. Besides that, the system also unlocked a new appearance. Apparently, a teacup. The protagonist jokes, saying it even comes with appearance now, huh? But the system winks. Every time he advances to a new life stage, the system will... The woman behind thinks the protagonist really comes from a prestigious family. The best designers couldn't please him. She says Proto acquired the crown jewel even though he's very young. Surely his future is truly limitless. Aining says Sen himself wants to talk to him about the generous payment he made. But the protagonist says no need. He didn't even spend much, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, he didn't spend much. 300 million, right? Not much at all. Without much to say, the woman says it's their duty. They expect protagonist's support in the future. But inside, she's outraged. How is 300 million nothing? Ah, those damn rich. But okay. Finally, they are arriving at the main house. Onining opens the door for the protagonist to enter. But that's when the scene changes. We see a woman asking her uncle Zhang who bought that property. the crown jewel, the main property of the whole district. The butler says it was a knight named Wang. He seems to be just in his early 20s. The girl is curious. 20 years old, huh? The butler asks the miss if she wants him to check his background, but she says no. Someone who casually spends 300 million on a property is certainly not an ordinary person. Besides, if they investigate and he finds out, it won't work out. What if the person feels offended, right? She asks the butler to select an appropriate gift. Soon, they will visit the neighbor. After that, the scene changes again. Now there's even a party, man! There's our boy saying that after 3 months of preparation, Dalgan Media is finally open. He even says he thanks director Gayan immensely. She worked hard to train everyone there. Adding on, he says everyone must work hard. Of course, the rewards will be unimaginable. Man, speaking of rewards, right? Who doesn't like that? Now everyone is motivated. Gayan looks at Proto very happy, and the protagonist looks at Gayan, very happy too. But that's when we travel 3 months back. Gayan is asking why she doesn't need to do live streams. The protagonist says currently they don't have quality staff, so she should prioritize recruiting and training new ones. Besides that, half of the profits from new streamers go to her. Gayan smiles, asking if that's too much. The protagonist answers she is a founding heroine of Dalgan. Besides, she has the necessary experience in all fields, so without her, he can't do all this. But of course, as soon as the company stabilizes, if she wants to work in front of the cameras again, there's no problem. But after so much struggle with that, she says she's fine. She'll just stay behind the cameras. Enough with live streaming. Then some days pass and we see a calm morning of work. Apparently we are back to the present days. King Shui is on his phone checking this Dalgan Media. He notices they really signed with a large number of streamers. But that's normal, right? Every company usually starts like that, at least those with good capital. But continuing in this field is not so easy either. What does this company have that's so different to compete with him? That's when someone arrives saying Dalgan is across the street. What would that mean? A direct confrontation. King Shui immediately stands up welcoming his cousin. Apparently he's back from a trip. King Shui also says he was thinking of a way to end this Dalgan, all to ease his cousin's worry. The cousin likes that story. He tells King Shui to really do it. Show him who rules this industry. With a puppy face, King Shui agrees. Back at the protagonist's small company, we see the boy sitting. He's looking over the styles he received, but none please him. For the boy, all are horrible. In his opinion, the 300 million property has to be luxurious, but also creative. Interrupting Proto, someone starts banging hard on the door. Ewan says their streamers received a PK invite from the Mion group. This time, all at once. To make it worse, the rivals have millions of followers. She even pulls out her phone to show this nonsense. There we see in the work group everyone reporting this. And everyone is desperate. Although the girls don't know what to do, for Aang, he's already an old hand, so he knows these little tricks. Basically, in quotes, they want to create cyberbullying, making a fuss between the two companies. Then the big streamers hit the small ones. It's an old tactic, but very effective. It's taken down thousands. But of course, they picked a fight with the wrong person. The protagonist says in the end, PK is just to spend money, so let the streamers go in. Gayan asks if the protagonist is not planning to spend a lot on rockets again. Huh? The protagonist says he seems a little extravagant with that. Seeing this reaction from the boy, she starts to wonder if he was the one who spent millions on her last time. But with an old man's face, Proto says if you keep still, in your hands, they are just numbers. But Gayan says still he should spend wisely. After all, half of the donations go to the streamer platform. Gayan reflects that Wang spent tens of thousands breaking contracts, and if her hypothesis is right, spent some more millions on her sending rockets. Even with lots of money, he can't keep going like that. He'll go back to being poor. But the protagonist doesn't care. He says even if life is short, people come into this world with nothing and leave it with nothing too. So there's no reason to save. Besides, it's not money wasted, it's investment. If the new streamers beat the giants, that will definitely bring lots of visibility to the company. In the end, the protagonist asks her not to worry. He knows his limits. He'll spend his money reliably and safely. The girl thinks that's okay. The boy's perspective is different from hers. Besides, he already knows this field very well. So, since he trusts her, she will trust him too. That's when some time passes. Gayan is already meeting with everyone. The girls ask what they should do. If they accept the PK, they will certainly lose. But Gayan orders all to accept the challenge to see the competition. The protagonist already pulls out his phone. Apparently, the battle is about to start. Sure enough, my friend. The dance battle has already started. The protagonist is watching the live, but also keeping an eye on something very interesting. The bastard didn't leave the Mian Company group. There everyone is discrediting Don Jin. Aang watches, but isn't that worried? He's more worried about the style his house will have. Would Hawaiian style or French vintage be better? That's quite a dilemma. Before Proto makes the decision, Gayan arrives. She says the Mayon team came well prepared. On the other hand, their accounts and funds are secured. But she also asks when they will start making their move. The protagonist says she doesn't need to hurry. Everything will happen at the right time. For now, it's better to conserve energy. Gayan should wait for the peak viewership. When that moment comes, they will make their move. Smiling, she says it's okay. She's just a little impatient. The protagonist tells her that, at this moment, the girl's thoughts are crucial. They have to stay calm, even if they lose. If they give their best, the protagonist will reward them all. The scene changes to Richoy. He tells his cousin the victory is guaranteed, so they should celebrate. But in his thoughts, he's thinking that even though they lost Gayan, they can still make millions quickly. Breaking the mood, the cousin asks him, "What are they celebrating?" "It's just a small company. This was expected." Inside, the cousin is not satisfied at all. Even though they made a lot of money from the contract break, losing Gayan was still a blow. Pulling out his phone and opening WhatsApp, he sees a peculiar comment. Someone says streamer Gayan paid the $1 million fine, left the company, and founded her own. After reading this, the cousin gets furious. He asks Richoy, "What is this? Why didn't Benito tell me Gayan went to Don Jin?" Shoy, a little flustered, knows that if he lets his cousin think he simply let her go, it will definitely go bad. So he needs a very good excuse. He says Gayan made a rich guy fall in love with her. Then this bastard paid the fine. The cousin replies that, all right, as long as he has the overall situation under control, everything will be fine. They should win today's battle. But then the bastard suddenly comes in saying he brought more news. His rivals are calling with rockets. The 2 stars are already huge. Rue thinks it can't be again. Last time they focused on only 1 streamer, but now on 10 at once. Where is all that money coming from? He tells his cousin that they're definitely using fake accounts. They already passed 30 million in profits, so they certainly can't beat that. Even if someone spends a lot, who would spend 30 million on just one person? The cousin, very serious, tells him that under no circumstances can they lose. Shoy replies that, of course, it must have been just a donation wave. Uh-oh. The employee pulls out the phone again. Apparently it's happening again. It wasn't just a wave. To make it worse, this time more rockets are coming than last time. The cousin gets furious. Didn't he say it would be just a wave? But okay, it happened. Now Shoy has to crush them. Otherwise you already know, right? Next scene. There's the protagonist with a nervous finger. His luck is that, at the same level he spends, he earns. He spends 3, earns 5. Spends 10, earns 20. Even I, my friend, would be clicking like crazy. Gayan tells him they've already won. Why spend so much? Gayan reflects that on the other side, the donation bar isn't even there anymore. So that confirms her hypothesis. Clearly it's him. The bastard didn't even try to change accounts. He's using the same from that day. Prota is all happy. He says they've never seen real money. Now is the time to show how it's done. Gayan, nervous, thinks this is way more than just showing off. That's when Prota calls her. She already stands at attention. He tells the girl to remember the main objective. They are aiming for the top, where no one can compete with them. After saying that, Aang says she can go. She just must not forget to remind the Mion group about the bet. Gayan says it's okay and leaves, grabbing her tablet. Finally, the protagonist says he found his dream style. That's the style he will choose. My God. I can't believe he's going to take a mansion like that and turn it into that. Just out of curiosity, the bastard grabs the phone. The miserable guy wants to see how much he earned. And, in this game, he made 10 million. Now, In several traditional media offices, everyone wants to know what company this is, who this Jin Media is. It became a mystery even for the streamer platforms. The girls now each have 2 million followers or more. Inside Jin Media, the girls say goodbye and say they will close the live. The first day was very tiring for them. But deep down, our boy arrives. The girls tell him they can't believe they managed to win. One even says she was scared at first. But, thank God, everything worked out. The protagonist told the girls that today's revenue will be divided according to the agreement percentage. And of course, everyone liked that. The system popped up and said the protagonist was very generous. As a reward, he will get 500. Yes, just 500 bucks. Giving the system a scolding, the protagonist says it's a bit crazy. Sometimes it gives a lot, other times it gives little. This is starting to make the boy anxious. Amid the celebration, we see a leg appearing. Ah, but I already memorized that leg. I know whose it is. Of course, it's our beautiful Gayan arriving all happy because, thank God, everything worked out. But already in Media Group 61, things are not going very well. In the company group, everyone is commenting on the lost match. Suddenly, an employee opens the door, asking them to change the name. Jin Media is massively posting clips from the live, and in all of them, they make sure to tag. So, it's best to change the name. Oh, boss. At that moment, he looks at Richui, and the employee sees the mood is very tense. She better leave, right? To avoid getting hit too. She just closed the door when Sho took a slap. He said it would be just a wave, but look at this. The guys made 500 million. Yes, guys, the protagonist profited 500 million with this game. Sho tries to argue saying they also made money, but this is a disappointment. They made money but lost to a tiny company. Goldtooth comments that if at least Gayan had been in the company, out of those 500 million, at least 100 million would be theirs. The worst is that this was only one night. Sho says that this sponsor of Gayan, who liked her so much and now is helping the girls, seemed completely broke. He didn't imagine the guy would give so much money. But Goldtooth says that fortune's wheel always spins, so he shouldn't underestimate the poor. Boss Dis found out that this bastard also gave Gayan a lot of trouble, and that's why she wanted to quit. It was one of the main reasons. But Sho replies that he also allowed that to happen. And of course, the cousin doesn't like hearing that at all. Kicking him in the ass, he kicks the guy out. The scene shifts back to Jin Media. Gayan asks the protagonist if it's okay for him to spend so much money like that. The girl calculated the 5 billion they earned. They will actually get 1.8 billion after sharing some millions with the streamers. Wang says that, actually it's okay, they didn't even spend that much. They spent about 400 million just on this wave. The protagonist says he only recharged 200 million. The rest came from client recharges. That came as popularity increased. Besides the 200 million recharge, the platform gave another 100 just in gifts. If you round everything up, they only spent a small amount. Gayan didn't know that's how rounding was done. Now the guy rounds in millions. Aang says nothing went unexpected. Everything went well, thank God. He sacrificed a part but in return gained a lot. Facing Gayan, he just says he always told her her future would be bright. The kid says from now on the path to the top will be easier. Also, he will make sure to invest in TV shows. All newbies will have their chance to shine from now on. Jin Media will go much further. It won't limit itself to a streamer company. There goes his phone ringing. It's a renovation company the protagonist just contacted. The protagonist says he's leaving now. He'll leave the company for now because he needs to supervise this renovation. He says he will leave the bonus calculations to her. That is, the stingy one. Of course, she can't forget to include her own part, right? The way she is a little crazy, she might calculate everything and forget her part. The girl says it's okay. She understood. She promises she won't forget anything. Already at the village complex, we see that the protagonist's construction is really happening there. He is trying to control the workers, but the guys don't care. They are breaking everything. The bad thing is the risk of breaking the Pilates, the support, and everything falling down. But that's when he sees the little butler arriving. The butler says he saw a new neighbor arrived and decided to visit. As a welcome gift, he didn't bring much, just some products from the company. But he really hopes the protagonist doesn't mind. The protagonist reflects that he really looks like the butler of a rich family. He has the pure air of wealth, looks even like those butlers from dramas. Should he also have a good salary? Putting that aside, he takes off his gloves. He apologizes for the mess. The house is under renovation. Besides, he's pretty dirty too. But the butler says he should apologize for bothering. He just thought that, since they are neighbors now, it would be nice to keep a frequency of interaction. Taking the gift, the boy reflects that this rich neighborhood is really different. Even the butler is polite and courteous. Besides, the gift, which was supposed to be simple, is full of gold. And the protagonist says the butler is very kind. Helping neighbors is something natural. As soon as he finishes the work, he will surely drop by the other house, that is, the other villa. Then some time passes, and it's already noon. Apparently, the work continues. He noticed he hasn't stopped working yet. But you know how construction is, guys? It hits noon, and no one stays. Answering the phone, someone says on the other side of the line, there will be a class reunion. It will happen this weekend. Is he available to go? The person even says they heard that the girl he liked at university will be there. But you all know our boy isn't stupid. He knows this reunion is just for everyone to compare themselves and see who is the best. The problem is he was always underestimated for being poor. And there was at most a small businessman there. This time will be different. So this time he agrees. The man on the other side doesn't understand why he accepted so quickly. Could it be because of the girl? Probably. That loser is the small businessman the protagonist said always humiliated him. But at the same time, in Pingzhou village, the butler is describing the protagonist. He says the boy is kind and polite, and didn't look down on him for being a butler. On the contrary, he showed a lot of respect. He even took off his glove and cleaned his hand just to greet. Pingzhou says she understands, but then Ping hears a noise. She gets irritated, thinking it must be him again. That's her brother, who seems to be quite a womanizer. Every time he arrives with a different girl. Ping says she already told him many times not to bring anyone here. But he asks his sister what kind of attitude that is. Is that going to be his future sister-in-law? This time he says he already had enough fun. Now he wants to settle down. So he plans to marry Shi. Crying, Chi-Chi asks if Miss Ping has something against her. Do they have a misunderstanding to solve? But Ping doesn't even answer, just turns her back. Chi-Chi says she should leave. It seems Miss Ping is not very happy with her presence. Besides, she doesn't want to worsen the relationship between the siblings. The brother says she's just being dramatic. The girl shouldn't care about that. But of course, Ping is not being dramatic. She knows what she's talking about. Her brother tells Pingzhou not to forget what their grandfather told her. To inherit the family fortune, she will have to get married. So, is she jealous of him? Ping answers, jealous? Her? She just turned 20. She's far from thinking about marriage. Unlike her brother, she is not opportunistic thinking only about inheritance. Her dignity is more important. Besides, she thinks anyone can enter the Ping family. Grandpa has to approve the marriage first. He forgot. If you liked it and want continuation, don't forget to leave it in the comments. Also leave a like to help us. That's it for today, guys. See you.